Haidong! In this video, we're going to talk about aspects of Sangsu 2. So just like with the previous video with Form 1, we're going to talk about things that are kind of introduced to this form or with this form, or again, things that kind of like switch things up. So probably the first thing you might imagine, again, is, well, Form 1 was all walking stance except for one Teidosei and the Kimase. Most of them were, center cuts. Got to change things up, right? So the first thing is, in fact, stances, right? So more specifically, hip engagement as you cut. So for example, when you move with Sangsu 1, that's mostly using, again, your glute, again, your core and all that fun stuff to really drive into that center. Versus when you do that diamond cut in Form 2, you want to engage the hip a little bit more, right? So if you're here, engage that hip to cut, right? So as opposed to merely being like, right? So as you move forward, as you sink deeper, all you want to, obviously, is still engage, again, the glutes and all that fun stuff because it's building off of that. But now think about using the sides of your muscles as well, right? So this, not the size of the muscle, but the sides of your body, right? So again, instead of just using the front and back, now because we're drawing on angle, we're going to be engaging this muscle group as well as, again, the deep shoulder on your other side, right? So as I cut, it's not merely me, right? But again, engage this. So as you prepare, notice this stretches out, this prepares and cut through, right? So engage, again, shifting this way, engage that hip to cut. So this is also going to be working on something that was introduced in Form 1 but kind of like keeps going with it, but counterbalance, right? So for example, when I cut with my center, right, so this back foot kind of counterbalances the coming up with the, well, this motion counterbalances the center. Same thing here, right? So as I cut here, this hip is going to counterbalance and stabilize that cut. So more specifically, the knee, right? So the hip and the knee coming in, counterbalances, so you're a lot more stable. So this is engaging a different kind of muscle group, right? As you're going through your form, right? So again, Form 1, mostly front and back, this time engaging the sides. The form also introduces your more powerful cuts. Now the reason you do center cuts specifically is because first of all you do engage fewer muscle groups, right? And if you happen to hit a center cut, that's almost like an instant win, right? Because you're going right between the eyes. But with a diamond cut's gonna be a lot more powerful, also clears more distance. So it's gonna be a little bit more in your favor, although it is less ideal because obviously you can strike someone, again, right between the eyes. Much easier, but this time you're trying to drag through. So the diamond cut is actually going to be a lot more powerful because you can engage a lot more muscle groups and all that fun stuff. So here, again, feel this flex. Right, so moving on those 45s, you again engage the deep shoulders, you engage the hip, and you're able to, again, use your whole body. So the reason why I use Sotosei, right, is because you can actually use, again, more muscle kind of drive in that cut, as opposed to walking, you have kind of like an upper limit, right? Obviously you also have an upper limit for your diagonal with your Sotosei, but you have a lot more power engagement, right? So again, this introduces a more powerful cut from several different angles, right? So in the beginning, right, so you're coming from here, later you're coming from here, you're going to do an uppercut, you're going to do a jump spin diamond cut. You're going to do a lot of different, again, types of, diamond cuts, hitting different target areas for different purposes, right? So for example, you can be using the first couple to kind of like clear your space. This one's going to be kill shot, and then you're running someone down. So again, thinking about these same kinds of cuts, but with different application. Now, unlike Form 1, which had no defense except if you count a clear shot. So Form 2 actually has a kind of a constant defense, right? So again, you clear nice big. Here, you're always having the blade move around you, kind of always kind of protecting your head, right? So now there are a couple ways you're going to interpret how to defend yourself, but this is the first introduction of a passive block, which means if I have it, something happens to me, I don't really need to engage with my block, so I'll just keep it. Versus something that's called an active block. For example, if someone comes in, I can hook it I can engage with it a little bit more in order for me to counter. Now, the hooking motion could be interpreted here, right? So we're here, bouncing back, maybe hook, hook, counter, right? But most of the time, you're going to be using what we call a passive block. We just kind of have it up, you have it up, and then you counter. Have it up, counter. This is kind of like a counter example, but then as you're going this way, right, you're kind of bull rushing someone here, here, passive, cut, passive, cut. Make sense? But it's introducing the idea of defending yourself, which you'll be doing a lot more as you progress throughout the forms, right? Now this time you're kind of like always kind of protecting your head, right? Which obviously you're going to be doing in a different way later when kind of holding more defenses. But again, this form introduces the idea of constantly defending. And one more concept, again, there's always going to be more to think about, but for now, right, is just the constant, continuation of momentum, right, which is not really happening in Form 1. Form 1, that's kind of like the gist of it, versus Form 2, right, you're going to engage, right, so you can kind of keep moving and use your whole body to keep that cut going, right? So again, notice you kind of go to the end of your tether, bounce back, right? So again, using your momentum, using again how your body extends, contracts, and then push back, right? So think about how your body interacts with your momentum. So notice that all of these ideas were, again, present in your previous form, but again, they're a lot more prominent in this one, right? So again, it's better to probably think about this form introducing them, kind of retcon those ideas backwards, right? So again, we did talk about, again, muscle activation. This time we're just adding on the sides, which are present in Form 1 as well, but they're not as prominent. Just like, again, engaging the hip, right? Defense, right? So again, you can interpret certain parts of Form 1, again, the broadside, for example, as a defensive position in Form 1. But again, this is how forms keep developing, right? So you learn it all the way up through, and kind of like as each step happens, right? Kind of again, think like, oh, I learned this concept, was that true before? And kind of like, again, learn something new, retcon. Learn something new, retcon. And that way you can have a much more full and more enjoyable experience with the form. So I guess with that, so keep training, stay humble, and stay safe. Haidong!